And the jury is out. It was only yesterday that Wipro sacked 300 employees, citing that they were moonlighting for competitors. It was only yesterday that the information came out when Rishad Premji spoke at an event. This has opened a Pandora's box on questions like how the company found out in the first place, were ethical means used to find out that these 300 employees were moonlighting, and also whether there should be now stricter practices against moonlighting. On August 20th, remember, Rishad Premji had tweeted saying there was a lot of chatter around moonlighting, which he outrightly called cheating. On the other hand, we have companies like Swiggy, which actually introduced a moonlighting policy which allows employees to take up other gigs. External projects can be taken up as per this policy for pro bono or economic reasons and would be subject to internal approvals. Interestingly, this was applicable even for their full-time employees and not just their gig workers. In fact, Tech Mahindra's CP Gurnani tweeted, and I quote, "My thoughts on the trending M word. It's necessary to keep changing with the times, and as always, I welcome disruption in the ways we work." So while there is a difference of opinion in different parts of India Inc., what really is a moonlighting policy, and can we get to a point where we say no, absolutely no moonlighting? Is it going to be the future of work? Before we get into that discussion, let's listen into, for the first time, what Rishad Premji actually said at that event yesterday when he talked about sacking 300 employees.
If you actually look at the definition of moonlighting, Sunil, it is having a second job secretively, right? So that's point number one. Two, I'm all about transparency. And as a part of transparency, individuals and organizations can have very candid conversations. You know, I work for Wipro, I work for somebody else, and I want to, play in a band at night or work on some project that I'm working on, etc., over the weekend. And that's an open conversation, and then the two adult individuals, the organization and the individual, can make a concerted choice about whether that works for them or doesn't work for them as an organization. The point I was alluding to more is the reality is that there are people today working for Wipro and working directly for one of our competitors. Right? We've actually discovered 300 people in the last few months who are doing exactly that. To me, it's a complete violation of integrity in its deepest form. So that was what I was referring to. There's no space for someone to work for Wipro and competitor X, Y, and Z, and I think they would feel exactly the same way if they were to discover the same situation. So that's what I meant, and so I do stand by what I said, that I do think it's a violation of integrity if you're moonlighting in that shape and form.
It's a violation of integrity, says Mr. Premji. He's in no two minds about it. He's very, very clear. But is this a stance that's fair? K Ganesh, founder Growth Story, with us on the show. Happy to welcome Manish Sabharwal, Chairman and Co-Founder Teamlease Services, after a long time on the India Development Debate. Welcome to both of you. Mr. Sabharwal, great to have you back on the show on what I think is the hot topic right now. Should moonlighting be sort of nipped in the bud, or should we go the Swiggy way, where you accept it's happening, but let it at least happen with the boundaries that a company chooses to place?
I mean, I think that employers have the right to set conditions that they want, and I think employees have the right to accept or not take that job. I think, the single employment contract has changed to 8 types of employment contract. So I sort of agree with Rishad. If you signed on for full-time employment, you should take full-time employment. You're welcome to work with Wipro as a gig worker or as a consultant or as a part-time worker. But I think what the point being made here is that, not many people, it is sort of committing to a contract. And if you want to change the contract, you're welcome to negotiate it. I mean, I know lifetime employment has been replaced by the taxi cab relationship, but I'm not sure it's fair to sign one contract and then expect another contract. It's pretty simple in that way. Full-time employment is exclusive employment. You're welcome to not do full-time employment and not do exclusive employment. So I think it would be really asymmetric for employers to accept that, and it's already asymmetric, right? I mean, employees can resign anytime they want, but Indian labor laws don't always let employers get rid of employees. So I think it's probably unfair to say I want to sort of have a full-time employment contract, which is exclusive. I get the fixed income, I get the security of that, but on the other hand, I can do what I want. So the Indian employers are very open to multiple kinds. I think there are 8 kinds of employment contracts available to employees. They should pick one they want, but you can't
I
pick
mean,
one
if
upside and the
I
others
just
downside.
just to counter her, which was coming in, if I keep aside the obvious points, obviously you cannot quote unquote cheat on your company. You can't take their sensitive information and give it to a competitor. You can't not do their work and do someone else's work at their cost. But if you have a fixed employment for X number of hours a day to do an X number of job, and to do a specific job, why does that give the employer a right over your entire life and over your 24 hours and over your weekends and over your holidays? I mean, a job is not an ownership of a person, isn't it?
Yes, but there is an exclusivity in the contract too. In that particular kind of contract, which we have traditionally had, if you want an open marriage, you should pick an open marriage. Most of us have sort of picked marriages or picked employment contracts which have certain reciprocity in them. So I don't think it's slavery to agree to do a job for an employer. Most of these workers don't exactly work 9 to 5. Most of them, your jobs spill over. We are knowledge workers. This is not the factory regime, or this is not Maslow's, or in a way that factories had shifts and there were trade unions. Only 20% of India's labor force is unionized. So I would say no, this is not the assertion that an employment contract requires exclusivity is one kind of employment contract, which I think deserves to be enforced. If you don't like that, there's 7 other employment contracts, you should pick those.
Employees actually have those choices. K Ganesh, where do you come in? Because there may have been a time when what Rishad Premji is saying would have been accepted as the gospel truth. Of course, companies have a complete right to sack anyone who's doing anything else, but it's not become that easy anymore, is it? There is actually a pushback from a new set of employees who see their work and their life in a very different way.
Yeah. So I think firstly, this become a hot debate. I think it's time we should dial down the rhetoric a bit down. Otherwise, calling this as cheating, as not being monogamous in a marriage relationship, all that starts going into the extremes. Firstly, I agree with Rishad as well as with Manish, saying that if you have agreed and signed up for a contract, which is an exclusive contract, you should honor the contract. If you don't honor the contract, you are in violation of that contract. So let's look at it from an employee point of view. Today's the Gen Z or the millennials, people want multiple things out of a job, out of their life. As Manish mentioned, the concept of lifelong employment with a single employer is completely changing. The new generation is not wanting it. So they do expect the freedom and flexibility to pursue other things. And as you mentioned, you are given them an employment, you're not taken over their life. So you cannot say what everything that you do. But having said that, if they are willingly accepted and sign a contract for exclusive employment that does not allow any other work to be done, they need to abide by it. That's point number one. But from the company's point of view, they need to see if they need to attract the right talent, they need to attract the millennials, the current generation, Gen Z as they call it, and they need to give them the flexibility and the environment. No longer the concept of full lifelong employment exists, it is there. I slightly disagree with Manish. The contract that exists today between the employer is very asymmetrical. There may be 8 contracts, but the terms of the contract are too one-sided from the employer's side. But having said all of that stuff, you cannot violate a contract that is there. My feeling is we need to dial down the rhetoric. We need to sit and redefine. It cannot be done secretively. Rishad is right in saying that you can't secretively go and employ. It has got to be open, transparent. Even in an open marriage, you need to be transparent in an open marriage that you are seeing somebody else. You can't hide it. The moment you start hiding it, you start doing it in stealth. It questions the integrity and the trust. That is not acceptable. I think the companies will have to redefine the concept of what is really moonlighting and what is cheating, and two, under what boundaries that it works. Otherwise, my fear is they will end up losing very good talent because the current day talent is there. Of course, I'm excluding things like you are pursuing a passion, which is music or teaching, which has no conflict whatsoever and does
No,
not impinge on work.
but there are limitations on doing some of these things if they are giving you a source of income. So it's not that cut and dry.
No, not true. Not true. You get honorarium when you teach. If you are performing in music functions, you do. I know a friend of mine who works with the IT company who is an excellent travel blogger. She goes and does travel blogging and has got an Instagram account, gets paid for it by brands that want
And
to
her,
use.
her company is fine with it.
Our company is fine with it. It's
Yeah.
IT company is fine with it. See, also remember, for whatever reason in today's world, if the performance of the employee suffers, the company terminates the person ruthlessly. So it is not that you will tolerate non-performance. It may affect in your promotion. You may even lose the job if you don't do justice to the job. But if you're doing justice to the job and it is understood between both parties that you can work outside, then there should be no problems at all. I do understand it's a change in the employer-employee relationship that has happened over time. The pandemic and work from home has accelerated it. And therefore, it is difficult for traditional companies, traditional people who are used to lifetime employment to change to this. But there's no choice. That's the way life is moving, right?
Yeah, you'll have to
we are
change.
having this conversation.
Mr. Sabharwal, your analogy with an open marriage I find very interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was interviewing you several years ago, I don't know if you recall, you talked about the frustration of Indian companies with the hire and fire policy as per the laws. And you had said then very famously that it's easier to get a divorce than to fire someone as the owner of a company. So, which is why I found your analogy today very interesting. That in a sense it is like that, right? It's a partnership of convenience between the two sides, and the terms cannot necessarily be asymmetrical. When you have new people coming into the workforce in their early 20s, do they really have the wherewithal to choose what kind of a contract are they given? Do they even know what are the terms and conditions? They're just going into it in good faith.
Yeah, see, there's this myth about organizations pay salaries, customers pay salaries, right? Organizations, shareholders don't pay salaries, organizations don't pay salaries. And I think this debate is not new. I know it feels new, but, presentism is a disease historians warn against. You believe that today's circumstances are so special and so unique. Obviously, technology enables remote working, and work from home means work from anywhere. And obviously, portfolio skills are becoming the way to go in IT. But I would submit that, there's a Ronald Coase, he got the Nobel Prize for his Coase's law. And, when transaction costs between freelancers become too much, it's better to be inside an organization. And Coase's law, which in the 1950s and 60s made the case that sometimes it's better for people not to be in organizations, because the transaction costs are low. So obviously the internet connectivity changes some of that, but I don't think big organizations are going anywhere. And I think some people out of lifestyle choices may choose to be freelancers, but some people like the predictability of a 9-to-5 job in exchange for the community, in exchange for not having to worry about where your paycheck will come. So I would just say it's a little bit narcissistic to believe that everybody in Gen Z or Gen X or millennials, I don't think any of that means anything. There's a generational myth which goes around and seems nice, but these kids are not different from us or my parents. I think it's unfair to say everybody wants to be a freelancer or everybody wants to work gigs. Some people have higher tolerance for uncertainty. Some people value flexibility, but some people do value predictability. So this diversity in human motivations has existed for a long time.
But has the
unfair.
relationship between employer-employee and the way, and you're right, I'll cut out the tropes of Gen Z and Gen X, etc. But has that relationship changed? And I want to come to Mr. Ganesh on this. There was a time when if you took a job, you would consider you're doing it for life. You'd be in that career for life as long as you work. You wanted to grow up that ladder. That has changed. That has also changed because companies also not interested in having the same people on for many, many, many years.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I think that there is significant change between the current generation, whether you like to call it Gen Z, Gen X, or millennials, or whatever, because the previous generation, job security was important. The importance given to job security by the current generation is significantly lower. Same thing from the company's side. It was unthinkable that a large corporation would sack people, would let people go. Today, not just the startups which gets demonized for firing people, established companies restructure, resize, and let people go. So the relationship has changed categorically. And I can tell you today, when I passed out, job security was very important. Okay, right? Generation before me, government job was most sought after. When I passed out, it was a corporate job which had lifelong employment and stability was important. Today, you talk to people out of IITs and IIMs, I'm not saying everybody is looking for freelancing. No, that's not the case. But the percentage of people and the importance given, the weightage given to stability and lifelong employment is significantly fraction of what it was 25 years back when we are there. So the companies need to cater to the changed reality of what the expectation is, whether it's partly driven by technology, partly driven by mindset, partly just driven by the opportunities available. Why was the security important at that time? Because the opportunities were, today opportunities are many. Okay, right? Again, I'm saying 100% of the people, but lot more percentage of the people that was there. So there is, if you don't realize and react and adjust to the new reality and expectations of the employees, you will suffer. Now, Wipro is a great employer. Infosys is a great employer. They have created so many leaders. They will still continue to attract talent. But I would say it will be short-sighted if companies start only focusing on that and don't adapt and change and look at what are the ways to engage with the current generation of employees. Make it nice, make it possible for them to be able to work and get the best out of them.
You know, in the middle of all of this, if you think of it practically, and we had this conversation when Swiggy came out with its rules, can anyone actually do justice to more than one job with those 24 hours in the day? Or will there have to be some flexibility in what exactly that second gig is? Manish Sabharwal, you know, your view on this. That isn't it better to have some flexibility on what it is so you ensure that this whole quiet quitting is not coming in, that you ensure that people are willing to come back to the office. Recently, a lot of TCS employees didn't want to come back to the office. They want to work from home, perhaps because they want to moonlight. I don't know. But, you know, is it time now for a more open conversation?
See, first of all, 85% of the labor force can't work from home. They work with their hands and legs. Second, this job security nostalgia is only applicable to 10 or 15% of India's labor force because 50% works in agriculture and 35% works in the informal sector. So we must recognize this conversation as a sampling error, you know, for the Indian labor force at least right now. And I'm really not sure that extrapolating the wishes and desires of some people to the whole labor force, these people who want flexibility are welcome to choose flexibility. I think the problem is you want to choose flexibility while you want the upside of security, you want the upside of a large organization. I just think, you know, there is no diet Coke employment, right? You can't have the taste without the calories. You want to work for a big company, have the predictability, have the security, have the community. You want to freelance, you're welcome to have the flexibility, you're welcome to have the uncertainty, but then don't expect the guarantees or the underwriting which a big company does. I have no issues with diversity, and I think that, frankly, it isn't. I'm sorry. India has the largest gig economy in the world for the last 50 years. 50% of our labor force is self-employed. Be careful with presentism.
All right. I agree. This is about the IT sector. It's about large companies. You know, one would argue that people who are engaged in informal labor anyway have a plan A, plan B, plan C, all the way to plan F. So that's a different story. We're talking about a certain segment of employees and employers, and within that construct, My point is that this is definitely a newer phenomenon, maybe, fueled by the pandemic. And after that, things have changed. Do we need to start recognizing it, is my question, instead of companies saying it's my way or the highway? Mr. Sabharwal.
I think it would be very hard for employers of a certain kind to totally be open architecture. What they can do is they can create 8 different kinds of employment contracts, which many of them have, and people can choose which bucket they self-select to. But I think it would be, I think it's a little unfair to say I want the security, predictability, and community. Big companies have many problems. First of all, I've never met a small company that doesn't want to be a big company. So let's be careful with demonizing big companies. But I think you can't have it both ways. I think you need to pick your life, and you're welcome to pick your life. And if you're saying that, oh, India and the world now allows you to pick life, and in the past, India has created the world's largest democracy on the infertile soil of the world's most hierarchical society, and companies are hierarchical. I disagree with that. I'm just making the case that I welcome flexibility, I welcome freedom. Just choose your bed and sleep in it. Don't try and cut and paste the best of the world. Life is about picking the package you want, and all packages have upsides and downsides.
Practically, if someone is joining a company as a near fresher, K Ganesh, this question's for you, and they say that, hey, I don't know, maybe a graphic artist, I will work with you, but I will do projects on the side. Are they likely to not get hired? It's a practical question, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think if the skills are new age skills, which are not available easily for a traditional person to get on full-time employment, companies will have to adjust. This brings us to an interesting question that there are some functions, some skill set where there may not be choice in order to get the right talent, best talent. You will need to allow that particular flexibility because the people may want to choose that flexibility. Otherwise, they will not join you. It could be that, or it could be that you would just need it for not full time. You don't need it for full time. I know the concept of outsourced part-time virtual CFO services, CMO services, all those exist even today, where you say that I need a CFO, but I can't afford to have it. Or you take media, for example, you hire a person for a project or for a web series or for a particular show, and it's not a full-time commitment that you're expecting, nor are you paying for it. There it is fine. So to answer your question, today a fresher has got a choice. If he doesn't like it, he should not take it. But the limited point is if the fresher signs up for a full-time employment that prevents and contractually says that you cannot moonlight, they cannot moonlight.
No, absolutely. No
Two,
cheating.
if they want to do something, they need to be transparent and open and share it with them that this is what we are doing. But creative skills, many of the functions may allow that, may need that. And it may just also be for just the stress. See, not everything is for money that they are doing and in conflicting and competing areas. It could just be pursuing your passion outside, something that helps you doing it. It could be teaching, it could be fine arts, it could be other things that you like to do, actually helps it. This brings to the earlier question that you said, if it's going to affect your performance because you are tired out with doing 2 jobs, you 12 hours here, 12 hours there is no time to sleep, it will affect your performance. The company will fire you anyway. It will show up in performance. I think we should let the employee make that judgment, saying that can they burn the candle at both the ends, still be effective? Is that what they want to do at this stage and age in life, either for money or for satisfaction or for work-life balance that they want to do? Employee can decide that anyway. Companies have enough mechanisms to monitor their output, to put them on performance improvement plan, to fire them if they don't like it, to promote them or downgrade them. All of that exists with the company in any case. It's a asymmetrical contract. Company has got most of the power. They will be able to do it. But it cannot be done in stealth. It cannot be done as subterfuge, and definitely cannot be done if the contract that is agreed upfront, whether it's a fresher or an employee in the company, says that you cannot do any side gig whatsoever without explicit permission from the company.
Yeah, recently on this show, I was speaking to a founder of a company who got a lot of flack for saying that people who are just starting out should give 18 hours a day to their jobs. And a lot of the pushback was because why should we give 18 hours to you? If if they're going to work that much. Mr. Sabharwal, you think this is a debate that will die down very quickly, or we are just seeing the beginning of it?
Ronald Coase, who got the Nobel Prize for his case for organizations, also said every solution creates new problems, right? So let's just be careful with this, magic bullet sort of view. I think the debate has been around for decades. It'll be around for a few more decades, and people and organizations will choose the other side that works best for them. I do think that choices are made, and once choices are made, you're welcome to make more choices. If you make the case that India is great, just make your choices and live with them. My sense is you can't people in the middle of the road get hit by trucks from both sides.
The interesting thing is that you have a lot of employees, again, I'm not going to typecast them into which generation, who say that work-life balance has become very important. But then if you want to add to that work and then you want work-life balance, how's it all going to work out? So a lot of moving parts to this story. I'm going to have to end this here, but I want to thank both Manish Sabharwal and K Ganesh for a fantastic conversation on, I think, what is a very exciting and trending topic right now. We'll take a very short break, but we're coming back with a lot more on the other side. Stay tuned.